I asked my Discord for the funniest, best competitive Pokemon memes, and they delivered. I'm here to explain the context, what they mean, and why do a lot of people think they're funny. Also, if you want to join the Discord, you can check the link in the description to join the Discord. We have 4,000 people and we're trying to get to 10,000 by the end of the month. But let's get into it. The first meme is a bit of a classic meme, and if you've been around the competitive community for a while, you've definitely seen this image. The idea is that Arceus Steel and Arceus Flying have the same color palette, so just by looking at it, you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. Ordinarily, that's not a problem because the name will be written on the screen and you can tell. But what if you nickname your Arceus Flying as Arceus Steel? Then you can trick your opponent into accidentally earthquaking, thinking it's an Arceus Steel when it's not. At the time, this was a pretty funny incident, but since then they've made it so that you can't nickname your Pokemon a different Pokemon, so you can't do this anymore. But back then it was very common to nickname your Arceus as a different Arceus type. This meme is from Generation 3, where Explosion is a really common move. Back before Generation 5, Explosion was much stronger than you would realize. The reason is because it's a 250 base power move, but what it doesn't tell you is that behind the scenes it actually cuts your opponent's defense in half. That doesn't happen in Generation 5 onwards, but it was a very important part of the metagame before that. It was really common to build strategies around Explosion because you could explode your opponent, take out a key Pokemon, and then win the game from there. You might be wondering, how does that make sense? You're trading one Pokemon for one Pokemon. But the point is, you don't make an equal trade. Even though it's one Pokemon for one Pokemon, the trade you're making is benefiting you. For example, you can trade a weaker Pokemon on your side for a Pokemon that's really important to your opponent. Or maybe you can trade a Pokemon that's about to faint on its last legs at 20% HP and trade it for a full health 100 HP Pokemon. The idea is that Explosion is a great way to make progress in Generation 3 and any metagame from back then. But there's a problem when Metagross wants to use Explosion. If it explodes into a Ghost-type Pokemon, it's going to faint and do nothing. So typically, as a Metagross Pokemon trying to use Explosion, you would wait for the Gengar to faint before you would explode, that way it's truly risk-free. Metagross is literally waiting for that opportunity. This is a meme from early 2023, right when Pokemon Scarlet and Violet first came out. The metagame was dominated by this Glimmora, Gholdengo, Espathra core. The first Pokemon here, Glimmora, had Stealth Rock, Spikes, and could set Toxic Spikes with its ability. Then Gholdengo would come in with its Ghost typing and its ability. Its Ghost typing blocks Rapid Spin, and then its ability blocks Defog, which means that Glimmora's hazards are pretty much going to stay up all game. And then finally, you clean up the game with Espathra with Calm Mind, Stored Power, and then Terrestrialization and Speed Boost. Everybody was using it, and it had a lot of criticism because it was a very straightforward strategy. You would always lead Glimmora, you would always use Gholdengo to block hazards, and you would always win with the Espathra sweep. Special attackers have a fundamental problem in single battles. They have no way to break Blissey in most scenarios. Not all scenarios, some special attackers can beat Blissey, but most cannot. There's also Assault Vest too, but that's more common in double battles than single battles. In single battles, you have a major issue trying to break this one Pokemon. But for physical attacks, you don't have a Blissey analog. You have maybe Mega Aggron in Generation 6 and 7, but overall you don't have a Pokemon like Blissey on the physical side. However, you do have a lot more different ideas. You have Rocky Helmet, you have Intimidate, you have Burn who can half your attack, you have Iron Barbs, you have Foul Play, you have Poison Point, Flame Body, Static. So whether you're a special or a physical attacker, you have your own problems to deal with, but it's just funny comparing the two side by side. There are two memes on the screen right now. The first one is Prankster Encore Whimsicott. Whimsicott is relevant competitively because Prankster Encore means it will always move first and then lock you into a move. So whatever you do, Whimsicott will capture that and then Encore, making you do it again. That's pretty problematic when it's a move like Fake Out or any other move that you don't want to be using over and over again. Then we have U-Turn, a 70 base power bug type move which switches out when you attack. Because switching is so good for momentum, it's a very common move. So if you wanted to nerf U-Turn, maybe you could drop it from 70 base power to 60 base power. But Scizor has an ability, Technician, which turns a 60 base power move into a 90 base power move. If you were to nerf U-Turn to 60 base power, you would actually be making it 90 base power for Scizor. Now, this is a genre of meme that is very specific to the 2013-2014 range. Back then, Pokemon XY had just come out, and Pokemon ORAS Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire was not released yet. And one Pokemon was dominating the metagame, and that was Brave Bird Talonflame. With Gale Wings, Talonflame's Brave Bird would always attack first. The most common strategy at that time was literally going with Talonflame and using Brave Bird over and over again. You're always the fastest Pokemon on the field, and you're pretty strong because Brave Bird is a powerful move. With a Choice Band, for example, all you need to do is use Brave Bird over and over and over again. It became a bit of a meme that that's all you need to do to win battles. Now obviously it is a meme, so it is playing it up a bit more than it actually was, but Brave Bird Talonflame was incredibly common. However, once Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out, they introduced more Pokemon, general power creep, and Talonflame wasn't as strong as it was during X and Y. But still, these memes are like a time capsule for what it was like back during that period of 2013-2014. The meme on the left is a meme about Dondozo and Tatsugiri. Now, Tatsugiri's shiny form is pure white in color, and it has an ability Commander. It can literally enter a Dondozo and then boost the Dondozo stats. The next meme is referencing the DLC. During the Pokemon DLC for Scarlet and Violet, a lot of new Pokemon entered the format. Unfortunately, it also means that a lot of other Pokemon were power crept and had to leave to go to the second tier. Pokemon like Garchomp moved to UU the second tier because it was not good enough to compete in the modern metagame. But one Pokemon that didn't drop was Ribombee. Even though there are powerhouse Pokemon like Heatran and Mamoswine and Garchomp, Ribombee found a niche as a sticky web Pokemon, and that kept it up in OU the first tier while all the other Pokemon dropped to UU. Torterra got Shell Smash in Generation 9, and that was a big difference. Ordinarily, Torterra is a pretty trash Pokemon. Now, it's not that trash, but it's still not great either. In any case, there's something really interesting. Dragapult is generally considered to be the fastest relevant Pokemon in the metagame. As it happens, when a Torterra uses a Shell Smash, by only 1 point, it's faster than the fastest Pokemon. Landorus would try and Stealth Rock, and Tornadus T would try and Defog, and this was a pretty common interaction in the lead metagame. Both players would use U-Turn, Stealth Rock, Defog, whatever it is to try and manage hazards. But the meme on the right is a play on the meme on the left, and it has a very interesting Pokemon with Explosion Landorus T. Explosion Landorus T subverts expectations because you expect it to be a U-turn defensive Pokemon. But if you explode at the right time, you can often take out a key Pokemon of your opponent. Even though it's not like the old gens and Explosion isn't as strong, because Landorus's attack is so high, it's often worth it even though Explosion is nerfed compared to before. Roaring Moon is a very popular Dragon Dance Pokemon, but Clodsire has the Unaware ability. With Unaware, it's immune to all the stat changes from Roaring Moon, and Roaring Moon can only attack it unboosted. In that regard, Clodsire can actually wall it, and it looks pretty goofy when it does. The meme on the right is probably one of the more iconic memes. Clefable often runs the Magic Guard ability to be immune to moves like Stealth Rock and Spikes, and also be immune to moves like Toxic or Will-O-Wisp. But sometimes Clefable wants to use Unaware instead. Just like how Clodsire can wall a ton of Pokemon with Unaware, Clefable can do that too. But if Clefable goes Unaware, it does have to be careful about how it manages stuff like Will-O-Wisp and Stealth Rock. One of the ways Clefable likes to do that is with the item Heavy Duty Boots. Heavy Duty Boots makes it immune to Stealth Rock, so you wouldn't even know it's Unaware. You might think it's Magic Guard. So you can fool your opponent by using Unaware Heavy Duty Boots, and they try and go for a setup win, and then they find out you're actually Unaware. Know the difference between dropping to UU. UU is the second tier competitively. When Garchomp drops to UU, it is pretty sad because it's always been a top tier Pokemon and a really good top tier Pokemon at that. So when it drops to UU, it's pretty unfortunate. But Torterra for most of its life has been at the very bottom tier. We're not even talking about the second or third tier, it's always been, the 5th tier or the 6th tier. So when Torterra only drops to the second tier, it's a big win for Torterra because now it's actually finally usable. The final one is a reference to a meme known as Ice Punch Dusknoir. And this requires a little bit of a backstory, so I'll go to the next one. It comes from an r/Pokemon post where someone was talking about how on the ladder they made somebody angry because of their Ice Punch Dusknoir critting Landorus T, the king of Pokemon. It turned into a big meme for many reasons. One is that if you're low ladder and you beat another person on the low ladder, it doesn't really mean anything. Because you're matched up against people of a similar play strength, You're not playing an OU pro when you're at the very bottom. You're playing someone who's just as inexperienced as you. So to reference that one battle as meaningful became a bit of a joke. But there's layers to it. Beating a Pokemon with a 4-time super effect isn't really meaningful because any Pokemon can do that. So that itself added another layer of contempt for the post. But even then, on top of that, with a 4-time super effect, it still needed a critical hit for the strategy to work. The post itself became a bit of a meme in the community, and there were a ton of memes referencing that, including this very well done artwork about Ice Punch Dusknoir defeating a Landorus. This meme is about black and white Ubers, which is Gen 5 Ubers. Now, Gen 5 in particular didn't have Defog being able to remove hazards. You had to use Rapid Spin in order to remove hazards in Gens 4 and 5. Now that's already a little bit annoying, but it goes on to a different level in Ubers. No legendary Pokemon gets Rapid Spin. So if you want a way to control hazards in Ubers, you would have to use a lower tier Pokemon like Fortress. And even then, it doesn't actually Rapid Spin past a Pokemon like Giratina who has high defenses. So you basically have a choice. Do you use 5 Uber legendary Pokemon and 1 support Pokemon like Fortress, or do you use 6 Uber legendary Pokemon? Oftentimes people will skip Rapid Spin in order to get that 6th legendary Uber on their team. But if you do that, you need other ways to prevent Stealth Rock. One of those ways is Magic Coat Deoxys Speed. Deoxys Speed can pretty easily get hazards up with Stealth Rock, Spikes, Taunt, etc. So this particular game had a Magic Coat stalemate because neither player wanted to get hazards up and neither player wanted hazards to come on their side of the field. What ended up happening was both players used Magic Coat again and again and again until it ran out, and then they both got Stealth Rock and Spikes on the field. And for the final memes of the day, on the left we have one of the most powerful teams in Generation 4 OU, which was the standard play. But if you fast forward to Generation 9, that's literally a second tier team. You take the best Pokemon of Generation 4 and add in power creep, and now it's literally a second rate team. And finally, our last meme of the day, we have a Dragapult getting outsped by Electrode. Dragapult is the fastest relevant Pokemon, but technically Electrode is faster, it's just not relevant. But if you were to use Electrode, you can take advantage of a choice-banded Dragapult by hitting it with Foul Play instead first. So much for being the fastest Pokemon in the format. That's all I have today, and if you want more, make sure to join the Discord down in the description below. Thank you for watching.